Good evening. I'm Haylee Ficuciello, and this is Englebrook Independent News Federal Crime Report, bringing you the latest federal cases from across the Northeast United States. Tonight, a disturbing child exploitation case out of Maine, major drug trafficking and fraud prosecutions in Massachusetts, a sweeping transnational scam targeting elderly, and a violent crime and federal indictments spanning from Connecticut to New Jersey. We begin tonight in Maine. A Scarborough man has pled guilty in possession of thousands of images of child sexual abuse material. Federal prosecutors say Robert E. Milholland Jr., 49, entered a guilty plea on March 31st in U.S. District Court in Portland. Investigators linked Milholland to illegal files distributed through the BitTorrent peer-to-peer network, prompting Homeland Security investigators to execute a search warrant at his residence in July of 2025. Authorities seized multiple digital devices containing illicit material. Milholland now faces up to 20 years in federal prison, fines of up to $250,000, and potential lifetime supervised release. Sentencing will follow a federal pre-sentence investigation. In Massachusetts, federal authorities are cracking down on drug trafficking, fraud, and repeat immigration offense. Trevor Headley, 32, of Newtonsville, has pled guilty to multiple cocaine distribution charges. Prosecutors say Headley sold over 500 grams of cocaine, including controlled sales to undercover officers in August of 2025. During recorded conversation, Headley also discussed obtaining firearms, including machine gun conversion devices, in exchange for narcotics. A search of his residence uncovered 3 kilograms of cocaine and more than $32,000 in cash. He faces up to 40 years in prison, with sentencing scheduled for June. Also, federal immigration enforcement continued with multiple prosecutions. Angel Daniel Cruz Sanchez, previously deported twice, has been charged with unlawful re-entry following prior drug trafficking conviction. Meanwhile, Jose Alberto Tandra Tubi has been sentenced to 18 months in prison for re-entering the U.S. illegally following prior federal heroin trafficking conviction. A Harville man admitted to defrauding investors out of approximately $350,000 in cryptocurrency scheme. Lorcando Scalapti, 28, misled investigators for years, falsifying claiming profits with both his funds had already collapsed. Several disturbing child exploitation cases are also moving through federal court. Daniel Dabrowski pled guilty to distributing child sexual abuse material involving very young children. John Tapley has been charged with receiving similar material through encrypted message groups. Both cases carry mandatory minimum sentences of 5 years, with maximum penalties reaching 20 years or more. A former Suffolk County Corrections Officer, Jasmine Murphy, pled guilty to fraudulently obtaining pandemic-related benefits and loans totaling over $44,000. In a rare case, Adam Bede of Reading has been sentenced to prison for trafficking endangered animal parts, including tiger skulls and jaguar skin. An associate of Asian boy gang, Richard Nagagan, has been sentenced to more than 10 years in prison for distributing counterfeit Adderall pills containing methamphetamine. Guillaume Fernandez Taverns received 4 years in prison for illegally selling firearms, including weapons with obliterated serial numbers. Federal prosecutors also charged Worcestershire man identified as John Doe with stealing identities of deceased U.S. citizens to obtain government benefits for over 2 decades. In Rhode Island, federal prosecutors also dismantled a sophisticated international fraud operation. 2 defendants, Fan Ganzang Wang and Cynthia Gia Sun, pled guilty in a sweeping scam targeting elderly victims across North America. Victims were tricked into transferring money, purchasing gold, and handed over cash to individuals posing as government agents. Authorities say at least 300 victims over 37 states were impacted, with confirmed losses exceeding $5 million and suspected laundering reaching $16 million. In a separate case, Kevin LeBron D. Jose is charged with attempted to obtain 1 kilogram of fentanyl, a quantity capable of causing mass casualties. Jose Matos Perez admitted to decade-long fraud scheme using stolen identities to obtain approximately $75,000 in government benefits. In Connecticut, federal cases highlight violent crimes, exploitation, and organized fraud. A New Jersey man, Miguel Fernandez Guzman, has been sentenced to 14 years in prison after exploiting minors and providing her with cocaine. Thomas Mara, already on federal supervised release, is accused of robbing a Connecticut bank, potentially facing 20 additional years in prison. Hucheng Zhang was sentenced for orchestrating a scheme using stolen identities to finance luxury vehicles. Eric Cox received federal sentence for firearm and drug offense tied to a violent shooting incident in Hartford. A New Britain couple generated over $4 million selling counterfeit designer goods online before being sentenced in federal court. In Western New York, federal prosecutors report a surge in drug, firearm, and child exploitation cases. A registered sex offender, John Peterson, has been charged again with child pornography offenses. Jose Hernandez Hofnick was sentenced to over 11 years in prison after traveling across state lines to exploit a minor. Multiple defendants, including Antonio Rivera Perez and Isaiah Riley, has pled guilty to significant drug trafficking crimes involving fentanyl, cocaine, and methamphetamine. In a violent incident, Christopher Mavosky is accused of shooting a police officer during a federal search warrant operation. In Pennsylvania, Joseph Buckland pled guilty in a disturbing case involving creation and distribution of animal torture videos. A convicted felon, William Rogers, admitted to illegally firearm possession, and Justin Hugh has been sentenced to 15 years in prison for distributing child sexual abuse material. And here in New Jersey, Luis Garacco III, owner of multiple companies including EMS providers, admitted to evading more than $1.4 million in payroll taxes. Former engineer Daniel Ryan pled guilty after launching a cyber attack against his employer and demanding ransom in Bitcoin. And finally, an Air Force officer, Gabriel Perez, has been indicted on federal charges involving attempted enticement of a minor, facing potential life sentence. From child exploitation and violent crimes to international fraud and large-scale drug trafficking, federal authorities across the Northeast continue to pursue complex and often disturbing cases impacting communities at every level. For Englebrook Independent News, I'm Haylee Ficuciello. Stay informed, stay vigilant. Good night.